The school was quiet after 4 p.m. in a way that felt heavy. Not peaceful, just empty. Leo preferred it. The shouts and laughs of the day had faded, leaving behind only the smell of lemon floor cleaner and old books. He pushed his wide janitor's cart down the polished hallway of Evergreen Academy, the wheels whispering on the linoleum. His uniform was clean, but worn at the edges. Just like at 46, Leo felt older. His hands, big and careful, knew how to fix a leaky faucet or unjam a locker, skills he'd learned after his old life in construction ended. That life ended for good 2 years ago when Anna got sick. The kind of sick that doesn't get better. After she was gone, the house was too loud with silence. He sold the piano first, because every note on it felt like a memory he couldn't bear to touch. He took the night janitor job, because the dark hours were the hardest. And here, at least, he had a job to do that his round ended at the music room. He flicked on the lights, which hummed to life over rows of empty chairs. And there it sat in the corner, an old mahogany upright piano, its surface dusty. The school's instrument was nothing special, a little out of tune, but it was the same model Anna had. His heart did the same tight squeeze it always did. He finished his work wiping down the desks, emptying the small trash bin by the teacher's desk, filled with discarded pencil shavings and candy wrappers. The room was clean. He should move on to the science lab. But the piano seemed to pull at him. It had been months since he tried. With a sigh that came from his shoes, he walked over. He lifted the fall board, the familiar click a sound from a past life. He sat on the creaky stool, the leather cool through his pants. For a long minute, he just looked at his rough hands on the neat row of white keys. They looked like they didn't belong. Then very softly, he began to play. Not a proper song, just some chords. The same simple, sad progression he and Anna used to fool around with. He played it slowly, each note hanging in the empty air before fading. He didn't play the melody right. His fingers, stiff from work, fumbled a note in the second measure. He didn't even notice. He was lost in the feeling of it, the deep, resonant vibration of the bass notes, the slight give of the keys. It wasn't happy music. It was the sound of missing someone. A deep, hollow ache that lived in his ribs. He thought he was alone. Asterisk, 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 in the aftercare room down the hall. A little girl sat perfectly still while chaos moved around her. Kids shouted over a board game. A tablet played a noisy cartoon. Maya didn't seem to notice. She was 10, with dark hair pulled into a neat braid, her eyes a calm, unfocused blue. She was listening. She was waiting for her mother. Her mother was always late, her voice always carrying a faint echo of a just-finished important call when she finally rushed in. Maya didn't mind the waiting so much. She knew the sounds of the school like her own heartbeat. The hum of the fridge in the teacher's lounge, the specific squeak of the custodian's cartwheel from the west hallway. And for the past few weeks, the music dotted came faintly, just after the final bell. It wasn't like her proper piano lessons. Her tutor, Mrs. Allen, had crisp, perfect notes and counting. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. This music was different. It was messy. It was sad. But underneath the sadness, Maya could hear something else. Something warm and old, like the sun on a wooden porch. It only lasted for a few minutes, then it would stop, cut off as if someone had closed a lid. Today, the aftercare supervisor was distracted, signing out 2 arguing brothers. The hallway was clear. The music started again, that same hesitant, beautiful ache. Maya slid off her chair. She knew the route to the music room by heart-30-7 steps down the hall, turned right at the water fountain, which smelled like metal, then 20 more steps. Her cane tapped lightly, but she didn't really need it here. She stopped just outside the open door. She could hear the cleaner's cart. She could smell the lemon polish. And she could hear the music, clearer now. It washed over her. She could picture the man her mother had pointed out once in a hushed, not meant for her voice. That's Leo, the night janitor. She'd imagined him as tall, with quiet hands. Then the music stopped abruptly, mid-phrase. He'd heard her. Hello? His voice was low, surprised, and a little worried. Maya didn't move from the doorway. You missed the F-sharp in the second measure, she said, her voice clear and matter-of-fact. There was a stunned silence. Then a soft, shaky laugh. Guess I did? You play the grief really well, Maya continued, taking a small step into the room. The loneliness in the slow parts. But you don't play the love that was there before it. The part that makes the grief hurt so much. She tilted her head. It's like you're only telling the end of the story. Leo felt like the air had been punched from his lungs. This small, blind girl in a neat school uniform had just seen straight into the center of him. He looked at his hands, then at her. How do you know about that? I listen, Maya said simply. She took a few more confident steps into the room, her hand brushing the back of a chair. My tutor, she teaches me scales and theory. She says my technique is commendable for my condition. Maya said the last word with a tiny, practiced flatness. But she doesn't teach me how to make the piano sound like that, like a real feeling. She faced the direction of the piano. Can you teach me? Leo stood up, the stool scraping. Oh no, I'm not a teacher. I'm the janitor. And I shouldn't even be. Please? The word wasn't whiny or demanding. It was a quiet, genuine request. No one has to know. It can be a secret. I'm good at secrets. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. This was against every rule. He could lose his job. This was a student, and the daughter of the CEO, who basically owned the school board. It was a terrible idea, but he looked at her. She wasn't asking for pity. She was asking for the truth in the music, the thing he'd just been aching for himself. She had heard it, recognized it, and wanted to learn its language. How could he say no to that? He let out a long, slow breath. The rule follower in him was shouting warnings. The man who missed his wife, the man who still heard music in his dreams, quieted it. Okay, he said, his voice rough. But this stays our secret. Just you and me. And if anyone finds out, they won't, Maya said, a small, sure smile touching her lips. He pulled out a chair for her, positioning it carefully next to the piano bench. All right then. Lesson 1. This piano, he said, guiding her hand to rest lightly on the side of the wooden frame. Can you feel that? That slight vibration, even when it's quiet? That's its heartbeat. The music doesn't just come from the keys. It lives in the whole thing. Maya's fingers spread wide, feeling the hum of the quiet room, the residual warmth from the soundboard. Her serious face lit up with a kind of understanding Leo hadn't seen before. Outside, in the deepening twilight of the courtyard, a shadow moved. Evelyn had come late, again, a tight knot of guilt in her stomach. She'd seen the aftercare room was empty, and a flash of panic made her breath catch until she heard the faint, unmistakable sound of a piano from the music wing. She moved to the window, peering through the glass. She saw her daughter, Maya, sitting beside the janitor. She saw the man's large, careful hands pointing to the piano, not playing it. She saw Maya, who so often sat still and polite, leaning forward, alive with interest. She saw the man's face, not a servant's face, not a janitor's face, but the face of a man sharing something he loved. 100 CEO instincts fired. To march in. To take control, to assess the liability, to protect her daughter. But she stopped. She saw the look on Maya's face. It was a look she hadn't been able to put there herself in a long time. So Evelyn, the woman who solved every problem, who commanded every room, did nothing. She just stood there in the cooling dark, a silent observer, one hand pressed against the cold window pane, watching a secret lesson begin. The secret became a rhythm, as steady as the ticking of the big clock in the music room. Every Tuesday and Thursday, after the final bell had echoed away and the aftercare supervisor was busy counting heads, Maya would make her quiet journey down the 37 steps, past the metal-smelling fountain. Leo would already be there, having hurried through his cleaning of the nearby classrooms. He'd leave the door open, just a crack, a silent invitation. He was a teacher unlike any she'd ever had. Mrs. Allen, her proper tutor, spoke of dynamics in fingering and emotional interpretation as if it were another technical skill to master. Leo didn't know those words. He spoke a different language. This part here, he'd say, his voice low and thoughtful, as he played a series of high light notes. This isn't just allegro. This is the sound of sunlight hitting a creek in the woods. You know, all broken up and sparkly on the water. Maya would nod, her fingers hovering over the keys. Cool, but the creek is in the shade part of the day. So the sunlight is warm, but the air around it is a little cool. Leo would smile, a real one that softened his tired eyes. Right, so play the warmth with a little distance. Like this. He'd play it again, the same notes, but now they sounded thoughtful, a little lonely, and beautiful. He taught her to feel the music in her bones. He'd have her press her palm flat against the piano's side while he played a deep, low chord. Feel that? That's the thunder before the rain. That's in your chest, not just your ears. He showed her how the pedals weren't just switches, but tools for blending colors, like a painter smudging pastels. They talked while they worked. Maya told him about how she navigated the world, not as a lack of sight, but as a different kind of seeing. She described people by the sound of their footsteps, rooms by their echo. Leo told her small, safe stories about Anna, not the sad ending, but the good middle. How she used to hum off-key when she cooked. How she always planted purple flowers because she said they looked like laughter. She'd have liked you, Leo said one day. After telling Maya how Anna could never walk past a piano without playing a silly little tune. You listened to the world the same way she did. Not just the noise, but the song underneath. Maya's face, usually so composed, glowed with a quiet pride. In this dusty room, with this man who smelled of soap and sawdust, she wasn't the blind CEO's daughter. She was just a musician. And he wasn't the janitor. He was a guide, asterisk, 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 across the courtyard. In the sleek, dark administration wing, another ritual had begun. Evelyn would finish her last call, shut down her computer, and instead of heading straight to aftercare, she would walk to her corner office. She wouldn't turn on the light. She'd move to the window, and with a practiced finger, part the slats of the blinds just enough. She became a silent student of their secret dot at first. It was just checking, making sure her daughter was safe with this stranger. But quickly, it became something else. She watched Leo's patience. She saw how he never grabbed Maya's hands to position them, but instead tapped a key, letting the note show her where to go. She saw how Maya, who at home often sat with a polite, closed-off expression, would laugh at something Leo said, her head thrown back. She saw her daughter come alive. A deep, aching jealousy, sharp and sour, would rise in Evelyn's throat sometimes. She was the one who provided everything, the best tutors, the best technology, the best school. Why did this man, with his simple words and his old piano, get that easy smile? Why could Maya talk to him? But the jealousy was always followed by a heavier guilt. Because as she watched, she started to hear it too. Not just the notes, but what Leo was pulling out of her daughter. The music began to change. Maya's playing had always been technically impressive, a series of perfect obstacles overcome. Now it had a voice. It was hesitant, then brave, sorrowful, then bursting with a weird, joyful energy. It told stories. One Thursday, Evelyn watched as Maya finished a piece, her small shoulders dropping as the last note faded. Leo was quiet for a long moment. "You're getting too good for me," he said, his voice carrying faintly across the quiet courtyard. Maya shook her head. "No, I'm not." "Yeah, you are. That piece, it's got places in it I don't know how to get to. You need a real teacher for that." Evelyn saw the panic flash on her daughter's face, even from a distance. "No, I don't want a real teacher. I want this. You teach me the important stuff." Leo ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "The notes are important, kid. If you want to play the big stuff, you gotta know the map. I'm just a guy who knows a few back roads." He looked defeated. Evelyn saw it. She saw the genuine worry on his face that he was holding Maya back. The jealousy vanished, replaced by a sudden fierce protectiveness, not just of Maya, but of this fragile, strange thing they had built. This man wasn't trying to be a hero. He was trying to do right by her daughter, even if it meant ending the thing that clearly brought him light. 2. The next morning, Leo arrived to clean the music room before the school opened. On the piano bench, where there had been nothing, sat 2 items. The first was a book. He picked it up. It was heavy, the pages thick. He realized with a start the markings on them were Braille. The title, in printed text on the cover, read Advanced Technique and Expression for the Pianist. The second item was a single sheet of lined paper, with neat typed notes. It broke down the very piece Maya was struggling with bar by bar, with suggestions for fingering and phrasing from a renowned pianist. At the bottom, typed, it said, "The back roads are the most interesting, but every good traveler needs a map sometimes." Leo's heart thudded against his ribs. He looked around the empty room. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. The windows were dark. The door was locked from the inside. Someone had been in here. Someone who knew. Someone who was watching closely enough to see the exact problem and cared, enough to try and help without giving themselves away. It wasn't a threat. It was a gift. A secret from one secret keeper to another. He didn't tell Maya about the note. But that afternoon, he slid the Braille book across the bench to her. "Found something you might like," he said, trying to sound casual. Maya's fingers flew over the raised dots, her expression one of utter astonishment. This is exactly the book Mrs. Allen said was too advanced for me." "Where did you get this?" "A friend of a friend," Leo said, the lie tasting strange. "Thought it might help with that tricky section." As Maya devoured the book with her fingers, her excitement palpable, Leo's eyes drifted to the window. The admin building stared back, its windows dark mirrors in the afternoon sun. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Their secret wasn't just theirs anymore. But the person on the other side of the window, they weren't an enemy. They were a silent partner. The question was, who were they? And what did they want? For now, the music continued. But the air in the room had changed. It was charged now with a new kind of electricity, the feeling of being seen. Leo played a chord, and for the first time, he wondered if he was playing for 3. The mystery of the helper sat between them now, a quiet third presence in the room. Leo became hyper-aware. He noticed things. The faint, clean scent of coffee in the air near the music room door in the mornings. A different smell from the teacher's cheap brew. The door to the head administrator's office, always firmly shut, was sometimes open just a sliver when he passed in the early evening. He started to feel the gaze, not as a threat, but as a weight. He decided, in his quiet way, to communicate. He bought a small, spiral-bound notebook from the dollar store. After each lesson with Maya, he would sit for a few minutes and write. Not a formal report, just thoughts. Today she figured out the rhythm in the middle section all by herself. He wrote one Tuesday, his handwriting blocky and careful. She said it felt like a heartbeat finding its pace after a scare. She's smarter than any 10 people I know. Another day, he wrote, we worked on the sad part. Told her to think of it not as an ending, but as a memory you carry because it was sweet. You should have heard it. It changed everything. She's not just playing notes anymore. She's building worlds. He never signed the notes. He would simply leave the notebook on the piano bench when he left for the night. The next morning, it would be gone. And the morning after that, it would be back on the bench, a new page turned, waiting for his next message. His words were being read. It was both terrifying and, strangely, a comfort. Asterisk, 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 Evelyn's life was a series of pressurized rooms, boardrooms, her office, the silent car, her own impeccably decorated home, which felt the most empty of all. The only room that felt real to her now was the dark space behind her office blinds, reading the Janitor's notebook became her secret addiction. She'd wait until her assistant had left, lock her door, and sit at her desk under the glow of her desk lamp. She'd read his simple words about her daughter. Asterisk, she's stronger than she knows. The sentence would echo in the quiet. He saw it. This man, who had nothing to gain, saw the strength in her child that she herself was often too busy or too guilty to nurture. The notebook entries undid her. They were so free of pretense, so full of a pure, observant care. It was the opposite of the polished progress reports from Maya's other tutors. This was the truth. One Thursday evening, the pressure of her day was worse than usual. A major deal had frayed at the edges. Harsh words had been exchanged. She felt like she was made of sharp corners and cold glass. She went to her window, expecting to just watch, to lose herself in the simple scene across the way. But that night, she didn't just watch. She listened. Maya was playing the competition piece from start to finish. The music floated across the courtyard, clear and powerful, even through the glass. It started tentative, a single questioning melody. Then it grew, layers of sound adding, sometimes joyful, sometimes furious, sometimes so profoundly sad it made Evelyn's breath catch. It was a story, her daughter's story, a story of a bright, curious girl in a dark, echoing world, finding color in sound. Evelyn didn't realize she was crying until a hot tear splashed onto the back of her hand. She slid down the wall, sitting on the cold floor, her expensive suit skirt rumpling around her. She put her head in her hands and wept silent, heaving sobs. She cried for the time she'd missed. She cried for the distance she couldn't seem to bridge. She cried because her little girl was an artist, and a stranger had shown her how to shout it from the piano. She cried, most of all, because she knew she had to protect this. The music was the most real thing in their lives. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The crack in their secret world finally came from the outside. Mrs. Gable, the head mistress, was a woman who believed in order above all else. She did a final walk-through of the school one evening, her heels clicking like disapproving ticks of a clock. She heard it, music, from the music room after hours. She peered through the door's small window. She saw the janitor, Leo, not cleaning, but sitting at the piano. And beside him, the Chon girl, the CEO's blind daughter. Her eyebrows shot up. This was a liability nightmare. An unsupervised employee with a student? She didn't burst in. She was too proper for a scene. She just turned and walked away, her mind already drafting the termination letter. The next afternoon, as Leo was starting his rounds, a student aide found him. "Mr. Leo? Mrs. Gable wants to see you in her office right now." The bottom dropped out of Leo's stomach. He knew the headmistress's office was warm and smelled of floral perfume. Mrs. Gable did not offer him a seat. "It has come to my attention," she began, her voice crisp, "that you have been using school facilities for unauthorized purposes. More seriously, you have been in private, unsupervised contact with a student. This is a profound breach of protocol and a serious liability for the school." Leo opened his mouth to explain, but no sound came out. What could he say? It was all true. Your employment here is contingent upon your adherence to the rules. Consider this your final warning. If you are found in anything resembling this situation again, you will be terminated immediately. You are a janitor. You will perform your duties as outlined. Nothing more. Is that clear? Her words were like little stones hitting him. He just nodded, a numb feeling spreading through his chest. The piano in the music room is off limits. You are not to interact with any student outside of necessary custodial functions. Now you may return to your work. He walked out of the office, the world gone flat and gray. He went through the motions of cleaning a bathroom, the chemical smell of the cleaner making him feel sick. It was over. The best thing in his life, the thing that had made him feel like a person again, was over. And he had to be the one to end it. For Maya's sake and for his own, he had one last lesson to teach. He had to make her understand it was goodbye. Asterisk. That same hour, Mrs. Gable picked up her phone. She felt it was her duty to inform the parent. After all, the child was involved. She called Evelyn's office line. Evelyn was reviewing the notebook again when the call came. She saw the school's main number and answered, her CEO voice automatically sliding into place. "Evelyn Chun." "Ms. Chun, it's Headmistress Gable at Evergreen. I'm calling about a concerning matter involving your daughter and one of our custodial staff." Evelyn's blood went cold. She stood up. "What happened? Is Maya all right?" "She's physically fine. But it seems the night janitor Leo has been giving her unofficial piano lessons after hours, completely unsupervised. We've had a strict talk with him. He's been given a final warning, and we will be ensuring he has no further unauthorized contact. I felt you should be aware, given the irregularity of the situation." A storm of emotions erupted in Evelyn fury, not at Leo, but at this woman for interrupting the fragile magic. Fear that it was already shattered. A fierce maternal instinct to defend what belonged to her daughter. She took a deep breath, her mind clicking into a different kind of strategy crisis management for the heart. "Mrs. Gable," she said, her voice dropping, becoming smooth and impossibly firm. "Let me be perfectly clear. You will take no further action. You will not speak to the janitor again about this. You will not monitor him. You will do absolutely nothing. Ms. Chun, the liability, Evelyn cut in, is mine to assess. This situation is not a school matter. It is a family matter, and I will handle it, personally. Do you understand? Your involvement ends with this phone call." The authority in her voice was absolute. It was the voice that won boardroom battles. On the other end, Mrs. Gable was silent for a moment, then stammered, "I? Of course, if that's your wish." "It is," Evelyn said. "Consider it resolved." She hung up the phone. Her hands were trembling. She looked out the window. The music room was dark and empty. Leo would be telling Maya it was over tonight. She couldn't let that happen. Not like this. She grabbed her coat. For the first time, she wasn't going to watch from the shadows. She was going to walk into the light. The air in the music room felt thick enough to touch. Leo had cleaned it spotlessly, but it didn't feel clean. It felt like a museum of something that was about to end. He'd placed the small, smooth stone from his wife's garden on the edge of the piano. His goodbye gift. Maya arrived, her steps quicker than usual. She could always feel the mood in a room. "Something's wrong," she said, stopping just inside the door. "Come sit," Leo said, his voice rough. "Let's play first." They worked on the piece. The competition was tomorrow. She played it with a new fierceness, a technical brilliance she'd gotten from the Braille book, mixed with the raw emotion he'd taught her to unlock. It was breathtaking, and it broke his heart. When the last note faded, he didn't speak for a long time. The silence was heavy. "That's it, kid," he finally said, the words like stones in his mouth. "That's the whole story." "Your story? What do you mean?" Maya asked, her face turning toward him, a small frown on her lips. "I mean—" He took a shaky breath. "I can't teach you anymore. The school. They found out. I could lose my job. I will lose my job if we keep doing this." "No," Maya said, the word flat and immediate. "No, you can't stop." "I have to. It's the rules." "I'm so sorry. But the competition is tomorrow. You have to be there." Her voice rose, edged with a panic he'd never heard before. "I'll be there," he promised quickly. "I'll sit in the very back. You won't see me, but I'll be listening." "You don't need me now, Maya. You really don't." He picked up the stone and gently pressed it into her hand. Her fingers closed around it, cold and smooth. "Take this. It's from my wife's garden. She said smooth stones were for worrying. You hold them tight when you're scared, and they soak up the worry. You keep it in your pocket tomorrow. And you remember that the music isn't out here." He tapped the piano. "It's in here." He lightly tapped his own chest, then pointed toward hers. "You found it. It's yours now. No one can take that away." Tears welled in Maya's unseeing eyes, spilling over silently. She clutched the stone. "It's not fair." "I know," he whispered. "It's not." It was then that the door opened. The sound was different. Not the hesitant push of a student, not the firm click of a teacher. It was decisive. Both of them turned. Evelyn stood in the doorway. She wasn't in her usual sharp power suit. She wore a simple, dark sweater and trousers. Her hair was down, slightly loose. She looked less like a CEO and more like a mom. A tired, scared mom. Her famous composure was gone. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her hand on the doorframe was white-knuckled. The air vanished from the room. "Mom?" Maya's voice was a small shock in the quiet. Leo stood up so fast, the piano bench scraped back with a shriek. His mind went blank with pure, cold dread. This was it. The CEO, the mother. She'd found them, and now she would end it with a lawsuit and security. He braced himself. But Evelyn didn't look at him with fury. She looked at her daughter, and her face crumpled with an emotion so raw it was painful to see. She took a few steps into the room, her eyes fixed on Maya's tear-streaked face. "You play." Evelyn began, her voice cracking. She tried again. "You play the loneliness so well." She was quoting the notebook. Leo's heart stopped. I've been listening." "From my office." Maya's head tilted, confusion wiping away her tears for a moment. "You have?" "Every Tuesday and Thursday," Evelyn admitted, her gaze finally shifting to Leo. It wasn't a look of accusation. It was a look of staggering gratitude, mixed with a deep, shameful regret. "I came to check on you the first time. And then I couldn't stop. I heard the change. I heard you come alive in here." She looked back at Maya, and I was too jealous and too ashamed to come in. She turned fully to Leo now. He saw no anger in her face, only a profound exhaustion. "You write that she hears the world in colors," she said, her voice trembling. She was speaking directly from his notebook, laying his secret words bare in the open. "For 3 years? Since her father left. I think I've only shown her grayscale. I provided everything except the one thing she needed. Someone to just listen to the music with her." Leo could only stare. The world had tipped on its axis. "The headmistress called me today," Evelyn continued, wiping a tear from her cheek with an impatient hand. "She told me she was going to fire you." "I know," Leo managed to say. "She warned me." "I told her to stand down," Evelyn said, a flicker of her old steel returning. "I told her this was a family matter." "And it is." She took another step closer, not to threaten, but to join their circle. "You were going to walk away to protect her, and to keep your job." It wasn't a question. He nodded, mute. "Thank you," she said, the words so simple and so heavy they seemed to hang in the air. "Thank you for giving her this. Thank you for seeing her. Really seeing her." Her own walls were completely down now. Can I please stay? Just for tonight? Can I listen?" Maya was frozen, processing. The two most important adults in her world were in the same room, and the secret was out, and her mother wasn't angry. She was asking to stay. Leo looked from the mother's pleading face to the daughter's hopeful one. The tight ball of dread in his chest began to loosen, replaced by a bewildered warmth. He slowly, deliberately, pulled the piano bench back to the instrument. Then he pulled out 2 chairs, one for Maya, one for her mother. "Okay," he said. His voice soft. Evelyn sat beside Maya, close but not touching. She reached out, and her hand came to rest on the curve of the piano side, near her daughter's arm. Leo sat on the bench. He played a single, gentle chord, a starting note. "From the top," he said to Maya, "play it for your mom. Play our whole story." Maya's fingers found the keys. She took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around the stone in her pocket. Then she began. This time, it was different. The music that filled the room was the same, but the feeling was new. Leo, listening, heard Maya pour everything into it, the loneliness of aftercare, the discovery of the secret lessons, the warmth of the sunlight on water notes, the frustration of difficult passages, the joy of breaking through. And now, a new layer, the shock of her mother's arrival, the confusion, the fragile, trembling hope. Evelyn listened with her eyes closed, tears streaming quietly down her face. She heard her daughter's heart. She heard the story of the last few months, a story she had been too blind to see. And she heard, in the final resolving chords, a question. A question about what came next. The last note hung in the quiet room. No one moved. No one spoke. Evelyn opened her eyes. She looked at Leo, then at her daughter. She reached out, her hand finally finding Maya's shoulder, a solid, real connection. Her other hand remained on the piano, inches from where Leo's hand rested on the bench. In that silence, thick with spent music and tears, something shifted. The secret was gone. In its place was something more complicated, more fragile, and more real. They were just 3 people in a quiet room, connected by a symphony of invisible threads. Leo finally broke the silence. "The competition is at 10 tomorrow morning," he said, his eyes on Evelyn. Evelyn nodded, her hand giving Maya's shoulder a soft squeeze. "We'll be there," she said. And then, looking directly at him, she added, "All of us." The lobby of the concert hall buzzed with a nervous energy. Children in crisp dresses and little suits cluttered instrument cases, their faces pale with focus. Parents hovered, adjusting bow ties, offering whispered last-minute advice. It was a world of polished shoes and perfect pitch. Leo stood near a potted fern, feeling like a piece of furniture that had been delivered to the wrong address. He wore his one good shirt, a blue button-down that was tight across the shoulders. He kept his hands in his pockets, trying to look like he belonged. He saw them enter. Evelyn looked like herself again, but different. She wore a tailored navy dress, her posture straight, but her hand was firmly wrapped around Maya's. She was guiding her, but not pulling. Maya held her cane in her other hand, and her head was held high. She wore a simple dark green dress. She looked calm. Leo's heart swelled with a fierce pride that surprised him. He didn't wave. He just watched as Evelyn found their seats in the front section, reserved for performers and their families. She helped Maya settle, then leaned close, saying something that made Maya nod. Then Evelyn did something else. She turned, her eyes scanning the crowded hall. She looked past the important-looking judges, past the other families. Her gaze traveled to the back, to the shadows near the entrance. Her eyes found his. For a second, they just looked at each other across the distance. Then Evelyn gave a single, small, definite nod. It wasn't a CEO's nod. It was a partner's nod. A co-conspirator's nod. Asterisk, she knew he was there. She wanted him to be there. Asterisk. He nodded back, just once. Then she turned and sat down beside her daughter. When Maya's name was called, Leo felt his own stomach clench. He watched the small, confident figure walk onto the big stage, guided by an attendant who helped her find the bench. The grand piano loomed, a shiny black beast. The hall fell quiet. Maya sat for a moment, perfectly still. Then her left hand slipped into her pocket. Leo knew she was holding the smooth garden stone. She placed her hands on the keys, and she began. It was their piece, but it was transformed. In the quiet music room, it had been a secret story. Here, under the bright lights, it was a declaration. The opening notes, once lonely and searching, now sounded thoughtful and brave. The sunlight on Water Passage sparkled with a joy that filled the hall. When she reached the difficult, thunderous middle section, the part from the Braille book, she played it not with anger, but with a powerful, unstoppable strength. It was the sound of a spirit refusing to be limited, but it was the sad part, the part about memory, that truly changed the room. She played it so softly the audience leaned forward. It wasn't a cry of pain. It was a lullaby for something lost. It was so tender, so full of love for the memory itself, that Leo saw several people in the audience quietly wipe their eyes. He had to look down at his own shoes, his throat tight. She finished with a series of ascending notes that were pure, clear hope. The final chord rang out and then faded into a perfect, stunned silence. For a beat, nothing. Then the applause started, not as a polite patter, but as a wave. It built and built into a roaring, standing ovation. People were on their feet, not because they had to, but because they were moved. Leo stood too, clapping so hard his palms stung, tears streaming openly down his face. He didn't care. From the front row, he saw Evelyn stand, her hands clasped to her mouth, her shoulders shaking. Then she turned, again searching for him in the back. This time, her face was full of a triumphant, shared joy. She had heard it too. Their story. Maya didn't win first prize. That went to a boy who played a furious, technically flawless piece by a Russian composer. Maya was awarded second place and a special commendation for most emotional interpretation. The head judge, an old man with a stern face, said into the microphone, "We hear many talented young players. We rarely hear one who makes us remember why we love music." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The world didn't magically change. But small, important things did. The secret lessons were no longer secret. They continued in the music room, but now with a new understanding. Evelyn would often arrive early. She wouldn't sit in the office across the way. She'd come to the music room door, carrying 2 paper cups of good coffee. She'd hand one to Leo with a quiet "thank you," then sit in the back row of chairs, listening to her daughter's progress, sometimes working on her tablet, sometimes just closing her eyes. She hired a proper, advanced piano tutor for Maya, as Leo had suggested. But she asked Leo to stay on too. "You teach her the heart," Evelyn said one afternoon, her tone practical, not sentimental. "Let the new tutor teach her the fingers. She needs both." One Saturday, Leo showed up at their big, quiet house. Not as a guest, but as a repairman. Evelyn had mentioned the baby grand piano in their living room had a sticky key. "It's been bothering me," she'd said, almost offhand. He arrived with his small toolkit. Maya was at a friend's house. Evelyn let him in. The house was beautiful, but it felt like a museum, all cool surfaces and empty space. The piano was gorgeous, and the sticky key was an easy fix. As he worked, Evelyn stayed in the room, sitting on the plush sofa. "It's too quiet in here," she said suddenly, as he tightened a screw. He looked up. "The piano?" "The house," she said. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking out the window at the perfect garden. "When she plays, it's not quiet anymore. It's alive." He finished his work and closed the lid. "Try it now." She walked over and played a simple scale. The note was clear. "Perfect," she said. "You play?" He asked, surprised. "A little." "A long time ago." She played a few chords of an old pop song, hesitant, then sighed. "I forgot how. Too much other noise in my head." "It comes back," Leo said softly. "Like riding a bike." She left her hand on the keys for a moment, then turned. "Stay for tea, please. I don't like the quiet." So he did. They sat at the vast kitchen island, not talking much, the silence between them not empty anymore, but companionable. It was the start of a new rhythm. Asterisk, 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 weeks later, on a regular Thursday, the lesson was running long. Maya was wrestling with a new, complex piece from her advanced tutor. She was frustrated, her brow furrowed. "It's just a bunch of notes," she finally exclaimed, pushing away from the piano. "It doesn't mean anything." Leo and Evelyn, who had been sitting together in the back, shared a look. Evelyn gave a small smile and a nod, handing the moment to him. Leo walked over and sat beside Maya on the bench. "Okay, forget the notes for a minute. What's the title?" "Winter Wind," Maya grumbled. "All right. So it's not about a winter wind. What does a winter wind feel like to you?" Maya thought. "It's cold. It's sharp. It sneaks into your coat." "Okay, good. Play the cold, sharp notes." She played a biting staccato passage. "But a winter wind isn't just mean," Leo continued. "What else? It makes everything clean. After it blows, the air is clear. And it howls. It's lonely. So play that. Play the lonely howl first, then the clean, clear air after." Maya's fingers went back to the keys. This time, the notes weren't just technical. They had bite, then a wide, lonely cry, then resolved into something pure and crystalline. She played it through, and when she finished, she was smiling. "Oh," she said. "Oh." From the back of the room, Evelyn watched. She wasn't watching her daughter. She was watching the man on the bench, his head bent close to Maya's, explaining the world in a language of feeling. She saw the gentle curve of his back, the careful way his hands moved in the air as he described the wind. The late afternoon sun slanted through the music room windows, turning the dust motes into gold. The music, now understood, filled the space not as a perfect performance, but as a living, breathing thing. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, a cup of gone cold tea in her hands. She didn't feel like a CEO She didn't feel like a failure. She felt like a woman in a room where her daughter was learning to speak in color. And she felt, for the first time in a very long time, that she was not alone in listening. The quiet in her life was finally, beautifully, being replaced by a symphony they were all learning to play together.